All right. What's up, everybody? Good morning, and welcome to my live stream, The Actual King Smith. My name is King, and if you take a look at the overlay here, you will see that I am streaming across multiple platforms. If you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, Twitter, or Twitch, comment if you're catching this live. All right. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit that like button. Help your boy out on the algorithms. Okay. That's the algorithm. I call it the algorithms over here. All right. Now, yesterday, Congress met for what was the first time, actually, and I was kind of surprised by that on the topic of cryptocurrency. I put a link down in the description for the 4 hour long video. Now, if you don't have 4 hours to watch it, or you don't necessarily care to watch it and you would like to know the highlights, then you came to the right place. Okay. I'm going to highlight and talk about what I observed between Congress and the six witnesses that came to testify and answer questions about the topic of cryptocurrency to Congress. Overall, I thought that the entire meeting, if you will, was very interesting and informative. I learned some stuff that I didn't necessarily know about, and it got me to writing down some notes of some things to look forward to the future. Okay. So if you're like King, or what are you talking about? What is this meeting that happened yesterday? Well, Congress has different committees that are involved around certain topics, okay? And they're held and chaired by a representative of Congress. Congresswoman Maxine Waters is the chairhead for the U.S. House Committee on Financial Services, which oversees all components of the nation's housing and financial services sectors that includes banking, insurance, real estate, public and assisted housing, and securities. Okay. And if you take a look at their press release and their calendar, back on the 1st of December, they had a press release in which they had said that there was going to be a full committee hearing on cryptocurrency. So this I knew about. How did I know about it? Well, I'm a government worker, okay? That part I've made no secrets about. And I've got certain tags or things for certain topics. Let me stop my timer here that I'm interested in. And one of those is cryptocurrency. Now, it's a boring subject to talk about Congress coming on and, giving their input into cryptocurrencies. But if you're a smart investor in anything, you're going to want to know what our legislative body is thinking about and talking about when it comes around cryptocurrency. Okay. So there were six people who they had invited on: Mr. Jeremy Allaire, the co founder and CEO of Circle; Samuel Bankman Fried, founder of FTX; Brian Brooks, who's the CEO of Bitfury Group. He's the only one here that I had never heard about, or I had never heard about Bitfury. But everybody else, the groups that they're a part of, I at least had some background knowledge on. Charles Casarella, the CEO and co-founder of Paxos Trust; Danielle Dixon, CEO and executive director of Stellar, which pay attention to what these folks are doing over here; and Alicia Haas, the CEO of Coinbase. Okay. And this meeting was held yesterday. It says that it was a hybrid hearing. And what that means, at least according to what I understand, is it was hybrid, meaning it was virtual and in person. Most people were in person that was a part of the committee or the witnesses, but there were a few virtual people that had called in. Okay. So these people, the witnesses, they're given questions in advance of what Congress is going to kind of focus on and answer. All right. And what I did was I went and I read this memo right here that came out on the 3rd that you could get from this website. Okay. And I wanted to know what Congress, kind of how they viewed cryptocurrency and what they were looking at and what their focus is trying to be on. And I observed a couple of different things that I'm going to talk about before I get into this. Okay. First of all, my opinion is that all of the 6 witnesses and people that I listed that were CEOs of their respective companies are smart and intelligent individuals. I mean, highly smart. So are the people of Congress, okay? The folks that people have voted to represent the best interests of the United States, okay? I'm trying to keep this as least political as possible for this video and just talk about the focus on how our US is considering looking at cryptocurrency and what they're trying to regulate around decentralized finance. Now, that's kind of funny to think about, but the ranking member, who's the next highest ranking person under Congresswoman Maxine Waters, made a point to talk about how the U.S. should definitely be interested in not stifling the adoption of cryptocurrency and should be supportive in providing everything that they can to help build the infrastructure and things around cryptocurrency. Okay, so there's that. Now, I took a couple of notes and I want to go through my notes here. Okay, so if you've never watched a committee or a subcommittee hearing on anything, they're governed by rules. Okay, the government is governed and there's a certain structure or way that it's set up. Now, Miss Maxine Waters, as the chairperson, kind of oversees how it's ran. All right. And she has the ability to, she leads the conversation or kind of guides how it is supposed to be ran. Like, that's her job as the chairperson here. All right. And I'm trying to bring up the video myself. Here we go. Boom. All right. And let's bring this over here because there's going to be different points that I want to try to bring up. Now, y'all aren't going to be able to hear this, but I'm just going to have this video up here as a reference. So the first thing in my notes here was this. As of yesterday, when I watched it the second time, there was 165,000 views as of 9 p.m. yesterday. All right, so if you take a look, 177,000 views total so far. Okay, all right, that's informative. Now, what that's telling me is I'm trying to figure out how many people watch this video to understand how many people care. So if you look at their past videos, all right, look, stuff that was streamed over a month ago, talking about timber to tungsten, cyber threats, 2K views, 1K view, 17K view on a video 7 days ago. But this one on cryptocurrency, 177,000 views. All right. So one of their most watched videos. That tells me that people care about this subject. So that's what I wanted to highlight by pointing that out. So like I said, the thing about my video is this. I'm trying to highlight things that give a different analysis from the average person perspective. Okay. So this right here tells me that people care about this subject. Look, all these other videos, stuff that's been out over a month ago, barely even 3,000 views. This video yesterday, 177,000. So that's important. All right. When the Congresswoman opened the video from about the minute and 30 mark, she said this hearing is to determine a lot of different things, but she ended the sentence on saying, as well to consider a central bank digital currency. And that made me go, wait, what? Hold on. Because I knew that the U.S. was looking at thinking about that, but kind of the how and the why was interesting. And let me see if I can play this back for you guys. and if the audio will play as well. Let me make sure that I got the speed back to normal. Okay, so get up here to 1:30, and let's listen to what Ms. Maxine Waters said for a couple of seconds.
Help this committee consider how to support responsible innovation that protects consumers and investors, safeguards our financial system from systemic risk, promotes financial inclusion, addresses environmental contents, as well as to consider a potential central bank digital currency.
Okay, so this was the opening remarks and what kind of drives the conversation. And a lot of the questions that came throughout around those subjects, financial inclusion being the biggest, okay? And safety and security from like fraud and scams were, I think, the second most asked questions throughout this meeting. Okay. So after Congresswoman Waters gave her opening statement, she then turned it over to Mr. McHenry. He's a congressman from, ah man, I forget the state. I thought I had that down here. He gave his opening statement, and he's like the second in command, if you will, for this committee. And he dropped some gems. He had a couple of things that he said that I wanted to highlight as well. He started out by saying 2021 is the year of cryptocurrency. Okay. And then at about the 6 minute and 12-second mark, he said this is the first time Congress is having a hearing about cryptocurrency. And he said, I want to be clear that this technology is already regulated, meaning that, there's a misconception that people saying that it's like a part of the Wild Wild West and that, Coinbase and, some of these other ones that they're not operating within our current government regulations. They are indeed actually operating within the parameters, but there are some things or some laws that need to be looked at or considered, because what they want to do is say here. He also asks his other congressmen, do you know enough about this technology to have a serious debate? Okay. And that the goal today is to listen, learn, and ask questions. And one of the things that he highlighted that I thought was dope was, how do we make sure that this cryptocurrency technology and regulation happens in the US and not overseas? And that Congress shouldn't be dumb to raise red flags around technology because they don't understand it, but that Congress should be embracing it and leaders of it, and to let's dispel the rumor that cryptocurrency is a threat to our financial system. Okay. So after that, they did an introduction to the six witnesses, the CEOs that I had listed earlier, and I took notes about each one of them. The CEO of Circle, Jeremy Allaire, introduced himself and talked about Circle's mission to raise the global economic prosperity through financial inclusion. He said that a lot. So, and Circle is the main issuer, or the people that work with the USDC, which is a dollar stable coin. Okay. And he said, soon we believe that dollars on the internet will be as efficient and available as text messages and email. And he talked about the goal of financial inclusion of minority areas. And one of the representatives that was on the committee that asked questions focused in on that. And they talked about this pilot program that they were looking at infusing digital dollars and money into minority area support. And I made a list to go and include and see what that pilot program is all about. They talked about it a little bit, but I didn't understand it. And that Circle is also trying to get on the national banking charter. Okay, so they're trying to work with Congress and current banking regulations to make sure that all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed. Now, Samuel Bankman Fried, the co-founder of FTX, which is I made a note because this guy looked really young. Okay, he's 29 years old, and his current net worth is $22 billion. it's this guy here. Okay. If you are in the cryptocurrency, then you've probably seen this guy's story and you know who he is. A billionaire at 29 years old. Because when I looked, I said, man, this dude looked like a teenager. I'm 37. But the guy has like a PhD in computer science, extremely smart. He started off nervous giving his opening remarks. That's what I noticed initially. I said you could tell that he was nervous. He told his story of how he got into crypto in 2017, built FTX in 2018, and his goal is simple, trying to improve how you can send assets around the world cheaper, easier, and faster. Now, I wasn't aware of the FTX product line, but he said that if you trade using their products, and they have FTX and FTX US, that you have access to all of the major tools and functions of their trading profile that major players in the trading game do as well. That they make that data available to everybody. It's not behind like a power wall for like the regular level versus the pro level. So I thought that was interesting. I'm curious about what FTX was just based off of this guy's conversation. Okay. So Paxos is the guy that came on next. Let's see if I can get to him here. Let's see. What did Charles talk about? He was a really smart guy as well. He talked about that their goal is to help financial institutions provide their clients with reliable, regulated digital assets, that the current system is expensive and slow. And Paxos completed a pilot program that seeked to reduce settlement times, and that he ended by saying if crypto is stifled, then people will flee to more welcoming jurisdictions. This actually isn't the Paxos guy here. Did I write this down? This is the Paxos guy here. Okay. Let's see. Next was the Brian Brooks, the CEO of Bitfury Group. That's this guy. He's smart as well. Their main focus is infrastructure around cryptocurrency. Okay. And the last two people, Miss Dixon, the CEO of Stellar, talked about what MoneyGram is doing and highlighted different use cases around stablecoins and stablecoins conversion to local fiat that were done with very low transaction fees and high speeds. And the use cases that she gave in her 5 minutes were very interesting. Okay, you could also tell too, highly intelligent. Okay, but the best speaker and my favorite person was the last person to go here, and that was the CEO of Coinbase, uh, Ms. Haas. You can tell really the best speaker has that nice mix of you can tell you know what she's talking about, and she's quick to answer questions and address what was being asked. Okay. I mean, like when I heard her talk, I said, okay, this is somebody who I would like to work for easily. She was easily the best speaker. But she talked about how Coinbase stores 12% of the world's crypto and the different things that Coinbase offers. And she talked about how we're past the investment phase of cryptocurrency and we're on the utility phase. And when she said that, I was like, I know I've heard that before, but I can't figure out where I heard it from. And then when I looked it up, the previous CEO back in 2018, this was Brian Armstrong. He talked about that in the investment phase, people speculate and try to make money on crypto. And this was back in 2018 to 2019. And he said this is what 90% of activity is happening today, primarily on centralized exchanges. But that in the utility phase, this is where people begin using crypto as a payment network, transacting for real goods and services, interacting with dApps, etc. This is about where 10% of activity is happening, primarily through decentralized wallets. Okay. Now, like I said, this was what the CEO said back in 2018. Okay. And the current CEO mimicked these two investment phases and this phase here as well. But you got it that the numbers around the activities are a little bit different now. We're starting to see places like AMC, okay, Newegg, um, Travala, which has to do around tourism and travel, accepting cryptocurrencies for payment. Okay, we're seeing that now. All right, crypto.com has crypto.com pay where you can pay using cryptocurrency that you have on your application. Okay, so we're in this utility phase right now. All right, now let's see. Let's get to my second part of my notes here. Okay, so the second part of my notes dealt with some of the questions that I wanted to highlight. Okay, the first question out the gate went to the CEO of Paxos, and they were focused on what Paxos is doing and how their plans don't undermine the US dollar. That was several questions led around to how does stablecoins not undermine the US dollar, and why can't we? Like, what's the pros and cons versus having these stablecoins, okay, versus creating like a US created and regulated or managed digital dollar, like what China's doing. Like China's creating their own government digital currency. Okay. And I want to get into the pros and cons of that a little bit later on because they talked about that and I wrote that down here in my notes. Okay. Mr. McHenry, the ranking chairperson, asks what Web 3.0, which if you haven't been living under a rock, you've probably heard that, hey, we're on Web 3.0 now. What that means to crypto. And his answer was interesting. Okay. The answer that came back from Mr. Brooks said that Web 3.0 for crypto means having the ability to have ownership stake in an underlying network, and that what happens on this decentralized network and how it is, ran or governed is voted on by the investors. And that's what's possible in like the Web 3.0 versus Web 1.0 and 2.0. You know, it was more controlled by the people that, you know, controlled the internet, if you will, like Google. Okay. Um, let's see. At around the 57-minute mark, Mr. McHenry had stressed to Congress that as they were talking about this, that it's not about. I'm just gonna play it. Actually, I'm just gonna play it because I want y'all to hear it from his mouth. Let's get right here.
Of those decisions.
Exactly right.
Okay. So I ask this not to be insulting to the panel, but to have a level set here so we have an understanding of what we're talking about. This is not simply about you on this panel. It is about trillions of dollars of assets that did not exist before Satoshi wrote his white paper 13 years ago. It's about $3 trillion in notional value at this stage around the development of a whole new range, a whole new suite of technology that will be developed across the globe, whether or not the United States embraces it and wants to compete, or if it's pushed offshore. So as policymakers, we need to understand what we're talking about here. This is a small panel, important as you may be, a small panel about the discussion about Web3. And so with that, Madam Chair, thank you for having this hearing, and I hope that we can have more understanding by policymakers about these important concepts. Thank you, Mr. Brooks.
So I like Representative McHenry as the ranking member and what he said about what the panel was for and what they're trying to do. If you quote what he said it's about $3 trillion in notional value at this stage around technology that will be developed across the world. Cryptocurrency is not going anywhere. Okay. So if the US isn't one of the driving people behind it, another state is or will, and we don't want to miss the boat on this. All right. Now, throughout the rest of this hearing, there were several other reps from other states, other congressmen and congresswomen that talked about that talked about, hey, like when the internet first came out, we were a little bit slow to adopt it because people didn't necessarily understand it. Okay. But there are a lot smarter people out there who work in Congress. One of the people was like a former IT coder or developer. And I was like, okay, that's cool. He has a very interesting background in this. How is he not the ranking member? So I just kind of made that note as a joke. Okay. What else was discussed here? I only have a couple of other notes, so this video is almost done, actually. One of the other questions that seemed to bubble up often were protections against fraud and hacks. And Coinbase kind of led that discussion in which Ms. Haas talked about how, for example, if you hear something about a hack on Coinbase, right? Okay, and that they have their stores of crypto primarily between hot wallets and cold wallets on their centralized exchange. But what struck me was her follow-on statement in that she said most hacks that you see in the news, okay, don't come from their side, but it comes from the side of people's login, okay, from their phone or their web, where their username or password got compromised. They didn't have two-factor authentication set or something like that. So it didn't come from the attack from Coinbase, but from like this side of the user interface. So I'd say to everybody as well, have your two-factor authentication set for whatever exchange that you use. Most of them offer it. Okay. So you can be, you can give some type of assurance that at least you're doing the stuff on your end to keep your cryptocurrency secure. At about the hour and 9 minute mark, Representative Green talked about volatility and transparency and when to be worried about a potential bubble. Okay. And Mr. Brooks was the one who responded to that. And he said something that I wanted to highlight here. He said, basically, we're still early. And yes, one person who makes a move can have a changing position that will cause a ripple effect throughout cryptocurrency. He said, we're not going to dismiss that. Okay. But then he also brought up this other point too. And I was like, that's interesting. He said 80% of Bitcoin holders have never sold. All right. And that to solve the worries around the volatility, we're just going to have to be more mature in understanding cryptocurrency, have more, make it more liquid, have the ability to have better price discovery, which he said could be, that's something that happens in a market when you have better knowledge of it, and that's what helps tamp down market volatility. Okay, now I can understand that. I probably can't explain it better than what somebody else can, but to me, that made sense. I said, okay, yeah, that answer to that makes sense. And one of the things too that most of the panel stressed was that the transparency in cryptocurrency, right? Like the one of the reasons why decentralized finance just works is you have that transparency of what the money is doing. So you can have those indicators for where the market might be headed and anticipate something like a bust or a bubble, if you will, that could happen. And that the reason why we had some financial issues in the past was there was a lack of transparency in where money was being flowed. Okay, and then there was a discovery that hey, we have inflows or outflows that have been happening that we don't know nothing about, and then boom, bubble. Cryptocurrencies inherent decentralization feature of like not having one person or entity be the controller, as well as you have that transparency of what's going on the blockchain, should prevent that. And him saying it that way, that was Mr. Bankman Fried. Him saying it that way, I don't know, something about that just clicked. All right. Let's see. My other two notes here are actually very simple. Miss Dixon had responded by talking about how you can increase that transparency and make cryptocurrency work is to provide and focus on consumer oriented products. It's not just for the financial institutions and the big businesses. Okay, part of it is having that financial inclusion for everybody, regardless of what your credit history is, regardless of your race or gender, regardless of what part of the country that you're from, regardless of what your net worth is having those consumer oriented products. Now, the CEO from Coinbase got grilled by another representative as well because let's see, uh, they got asked about their fees. Okay, and he gave an example of, hey, if I wanted to get $100 of USDC on Coinbase, y'all charge a fee for me to get the USDC, which is a stable coin. And let's say I didn't even purchase anything, but I want to withdraw that back to my local fiat. There's another fee that goes well. So for not even having used the stable coin, I've lost $6 of my $100 according to your fee structure. And that was a bit of a red flag or egg on the face, if you will, because earlier in the conversation, like Coinbase talked about how their fees are low and how it's, built to, help, people and all this and that. But that congressman, which I wish I wrote down which congressman it was, I thought it was fantastic that he had brought up that point to say, hey, if I wanted to use the US dollar coin that's on Coinbase, if I were to put $100 on my Coinbase wallet and not even use it, but put it back to my local fiat currency, I'm going to lose $6 in just the fees to deposit and withdraw. So I think that Coinbase might take a look at that going forward to see if there's anything that they could do around that, because that was a big egg in the face for that use case. All right, let's see. The other thing that makes people worried. Oh yeah, the part that makes people worried when they go and sign up for like a KuCoin account or a Coinbase account, they're like, man, they're asking me to upload my photo picture or driver's license or whatever like that. Man, I don't, want my stuff out there. And I'm like, you have to understand that they're operating within regulation. You hear the thing KYC, which is know your customer. Okay. And it's step one around keeping bad actors or people that are, scammers or fraud out of this space, if you will. So while you, on the centralized exchanges, you have to follow KYC requirements. That's a good thing. Okay. So if I suggest to you to have a Coinbase account or a KuCoin account, and you come back and be like, hey man, is it safe for me to upload my stuff to this? Well, you have to if you want to use it. So let's just get that out the way now. But a majority of what the panel um, talked about using risk models, KYC, and having task force essentially set up to try to keep the bad actors out. Okay. I made a note that Rep Sessions from Texas knows his stuff. It was just hearing him talk about cryptocurrency. You could tell that he was excited about it and that he understands cryptocurrency from all of the different people that was on that subcommittee as well. Um, let's see. Talk about the differences between the stablecoin and the US dollars. Okay, so they were asked about that. Like, hey, why have this if we have these stable coins, versus the US digital dollar, like what's the difference in, why should we stay the stable coin route? And uh, it was Mr. Brooks that came out and said, look, stable coins are out there today, and they're built on an open internet model. A digital dollar would be closely ran and may not be openly available for access to that model. And that right now, the US is currently winning with the USDC stablecoin versus the Chinese government digital dollar. Okay? And let's see. Da da da. Mr. Ludemeyer, who's one of the reps, had asked, how do we ensure that the US dollar remains a reserve currency? Part of the panel talked about being worried that currently the US dollar has a smaller share of the globally centralized bank reserves, that it was around 80%. Now it's around 60%. I don't know the economics of what that means, but that's what he said. And then he said, thinking about how an internet enabled dollar can compete would be more focused around the features and the utility of that. And that as the blockchain grows, the US should take the opportunity to back stablecoins so that it can play a strategic role in the economics going forward. And then a question was asked about, well, who controls this? To which Mr. Brooks simply said, the people, not one centralized entity. And I thought that was a dope response. Okay. So that's my wrap up of the 4 hour long video. All right. I thought that it was interesting what was said between Congress on the first ever cryptocurrency committee hearing. All right. And that they brought some really intelligent people on as well. Facebook came on about a month ago or Meta now, and they talked about trying to get, into the stablecoin game, and it got met with harsh resistance. I didn't watch that one, but I caught the cliff notes from it, and they even talked about that during this subcommittee hearing as well. So if anybody watched this, I would like to know what your thoughts were on the video. If you watched the video, which I included in the description of this, are you nervous about Congress inclusion of wanting to, ensure that we get this right? Okay. Do you think that they have another agenda and that they're going to try to push harder for this US digital currency or this US digital bank? I don't think that we're going to go that route. If we did, it'd be interesting. But what do you guys think? You know, do you believe that we're doing the right thing in having these hearings like this and trying to ensure that things are set up so that the little people can also be in the game as well? That was something that one of the other reps said is, hey, we understand that y'all are here, y'all are leading this charge or whatnot, but we don't want to exclude anybody that's new that comes into the game that also has a fantastic product or or something that can lead this charge as well. So I know that this video, right at about 40 minutes long right now, isn't one that is likely going to be popular, but it is important. Okay. The reason why I say that is because we have to understand and know or kind of be ahead of the game on what our Congress is thinking to anticipate how we should be moving going forward. An example of that would be what happened with XRP and Ripple and what's continuing to kind of come from that securities conversation with that. I'm gonna tell y'all right now, I'm gonna knock on wood saying this. If you don't have XRP, in my opinion, you should get XRP. Not financial advice. I'm letting you know what I'm doing. I had XRP before the SEC came down on Ripple. I currently hold about half of what I originally held, and you can still trade for it on KuCoin. So, yeah, that's all I'm gonna say about that. Thanks for tuning in. Hit that like button, and I'm out.